Do you see what I see? Because I see what you see, and what I see is a beautiful view. This is your pal, Sal Rinauro, and this is the Fans View Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fans View Podcast. My guest this week, he doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. He's your pal. He's my pal. He's Sal Rinauro. Sal, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the time, the opportunity.
Absolutely. How could I not have such an underrated, I'm going to call you a
Wow.
legend, underappreciated and underrated. But you are a star of the independents, I would say.
Yeah, which is crazy to think. I mean, life has a funny way of lifing, and there's so many times that I don't realize how long I've been in the indies, or like how many like generations of independent people I've influenced, which is like nuts for me to even try to conceptualize. But yeah, I think at this point, legend's a fair term.
So we're just going to bring it all the way back to the beginning. When did the wrestling bug bite you?
So it's funny. I tell this story pretty often. I don't know a time I didn't want to be a wrestler. Like it's just always been the thing, to the point where like I remember vividly in first grade, my teacher's name was Miss Bradshaw, and I remember she would go around. She went around the class. What do you want to be when you grow up? Little Timmy wanted to be a dentist, and little Michelle wanted to be a doctor, and well, Sal, what do you want to be? I want to be a pro wrestler. And then, Diana, what do you want to be? I want to be a dinosaur. She was like, she's got a better chance of being a dinosaur than you do of being a pro wrestler. And I was like, okay, that's right. It's on. Suffice to say, I think I won that.
We don't know. She might be a dinosaur. We don't know that for sure.
She may actually be Luchasaurus. I haven't seen. I mean, yeah, it's just always been, I'm either the smartest person you'll ever meet or the dumbest person you'll ever meet, because wrestling sunk its teeth in me, and that was it. Like, there was no other options, like I never had a plan B. I never it was just, I'm always going to be, I was always just going to be a pro wrestler, and which is awesome. But also, like, hey, what if I was good at math and never knew? Never even gave it a chance, right? Like, I could have been like an astronaut or something. Like, nope, pro wrestler, that's it. I'm done. I'm done looking for a career at 3 years old.
Hey, well, we're glad you did, because you've given us a lot of entertainment over the years, So who were some of your favorites growing up? Obviously, you're a smaller guy in stature. Were you drawn to those guys, or were you a Hulkamaniac?
Well, so I grew up in California, so like I found the NWA later on through the aftermaths, really, But like I'll always say Hulk Hogan's the guy that brought me in, Like I just like every red-blooded American in the '80s, I just Hulk Hogan was the guy. But with that caveat, Randy Savage was the guy that kept me, just like that's my dude. Savage was the guy, just because like in one promo, he'll yell, he'll whisper, he'll laugh, he'll cry. Like it's just this emotional roller coaster of insanity but like it was just the perfect storm. Plus, like, and this is probably where I get it from, but like his gear was always different, so like he always had a different look, and that's kind of, like if you really take a look at my body of work, it's very rare you catch me in the same set of gear, like, ever. And that's Randy Savage's fault, which my gear guy is grateful for it when I pay for it. He also, every time he sees my name on his phone, I know he's like, God, here we go. What crazy idea do I have to deal with now? But yeah, so like Savage was my guy, but then like even as a kid, I was drawn to heels. So like
Right.
Rick Rude was like, I loved Rick Rude and like Mr. Perfect. And then, as I got a little older, obviously, like, I was fortunate enough to be at WrestleMania 12, and like
Wow.
Shawn Michaels. Like the bumping heel was always, I love a good bumping heel. All those guys fit in that motif. And I didn't know, as a kid, I wasn't like, oh, this is a bumping heel and this is why I like him. I was just like, no, I've always been kind of drawn to that character anyways. But yeah, and then like kind of answering your first question too, like I said, I was at WrestleMania 12 and I remember vividly, like, my, please don't think I had good seats. Like you see the clips of Edge at WrestleMania 6, like on the floor. I was the complete opposite. Like, Sean came from the rafters. I was like 5 levels above that. I was barely in the building, but I remember very vividly. The match is over. Sean's on his knees, the belt's in front of him, and I was like, yeah, there's no option. Like, I have to do this. Like, there's like that. Like I said, I'm going into it. I already wanted to be a wrestler, but like that, I can look back on it. That's the moment I was like, oh, there's no turning back. Like
Right.
this is just everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a short list of some of the guys.
That's a hell of a list too.
Yeah.
So when did pro wrestling, when did it go from a hobby, something you enjoyed to like, hey, this could be what I do with my life? When did it get real?
So I would say so. I was I'm a big believer in do as I say, not as I do, and this is why. So in '96, I was still in California, and I was already hook, line, and sinker. They had right, like pro wrestling had me full boogie, especially in that generation. Like, and it's funny dealing with a lot of the kids that I deal with nowadays, and I don't mean that in a derogatory term. They're just all kids to me. They're all children because I'm ancient. But they talk about the different eras, and like, oh, they finally look back on the Attitude Era. Like, they bad in the heart, and they're like, oh, yeah, I love the Ruthless Aggression Era. I was 3 years old. I'm like, hey, why don't you die? You get out of my face. But, like, the new generation is my favorite era of pro wrestling just because, like, when I was coming up, like the golden age is what they call it now. But like wrestling was hot, right? Like it was everywhere. Saturday Night's Main Event with Hogan and Andre was doing 86 billion views, and all that stuff. Wrestling was hot, and then like as the '90s came, wrestling wasn't as hot, and all my friends found other things to do and I did it, right? So like then there was this new gen and like that was my little secret, right? Like nobody I knew liked wrestling but me. So like and then when it got hot again with the Attitude Era, like there was a couple people that would circle back and be like, "Oh, Sal's the
Right.
wrestling guy. I want to talk to me about like Goldberg streak." And I'm like, "Hey, buddy, you weren't here for Tatanka streak. Get out of my face and Goldberg streak. You're
Yes.
dead to me, right?"
I
But
love that.
so I was, I was obsessed to a scary like level where every magazine I could find, I was buying off the newsstands, and like I said, that's how I found out about NWA. And then obviously through that, your world classes and your continentals and your, whatever Lawler was doing in Memphis, it's everything, right? And I fell in love with all of it. And through those magazines, I found out that there was an indie show because I would read the results like a hawk, like the PWI, they would have the monthly result. At the time, I was in Anaheim, and I saw that there was results from a local show in Anaheim. I was like, "What is this?" So like I looked into it, and it was 3 blocks from my house. And I was like, "Oh my god!" They ran every other Sunday at the Boys and Girls Club 3 blocks. I mean, I could walk. So I did. Every other Sunday, I would watch shows started at 6. I was there at 11 a.m. I was there before everybody. And so I got to know a couple of the guys. And so like they would let me like set up the ring, set up the chairs, put out the flyer, whatever needed to be done, I was willing to do. I'm 13 years old at the time, but like
Right.
And then it got to be where like, well, if everything was done and the ring was put up, I was allowed to get in it. At 13 years old, I get to be in a wrestling ring. Like this is the
That's
best,
awesome.
right?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And some of the guys, as they kind of got to know me, they're like, well, we want to try out something new, but we don't want to hurt the other boys. Well, this idiot over here, you know,
Let's take the schmuck.
yeah, he'll do anything, right? So like I was, you know, and that's why I say do as I say, not as I do, because that's how I learned how to bump. Like I didn't go through a school. I literally went through the school of hard knocks where it was, hey, tuck your chin, kid, bam. Like, all right, now I'm bumping, right? Or just like collar and elbow tie-ups. Like nobody ever like broke down how to do a collar and elbow tie-up. I just kind of knew it by osmosis because I watched it my whole life. Or like how to reverse a hammer lock or wrist locks, right? There's just a lot of stuff that I just knew that I was never taught just because I'd seen it so many times. And I'd practice. Me and my little brother used to. I say we wrestle in the backyard, but it's not like backyard wrestling with light tubes
Yeah.
and barbed wire, right? Like we had like four old mattresses that we put in the shape of a ring, and we dug posts and had bungee cord as our rope, and then we would fight over who got to be who, right? So like, my favorite was always this is 93, 94, 95, and me and my brother used to always argue over who got to be Sabu. Neither one of us had ever seen this dude wrestle. We only knew Sabu from the pictures and the PWIs. It's not
Right.
like this crazy dude's upside down going through tables scarred up. I'm like, yes, he's my favorite wrestler ever. I didn't even see a Sabu match till like 96. But for like 3 years, that was my favorite wrestler, right? Uh, but yeah, so like that's getting to do the training and stuff, which wasn't really training, but just getting to get in a ring and do stuff. And like I said, I had already had the mentality of like, this is what I'm going to do. There's no other option. I'm going to pro wrestle. And then May 1st, '98, it was at the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm 15 years old. Promoter comes up to me and is like, "Hey, we got a battle royal tonight, and we're short some guys. Can you put on a hood?" And I was like, "Buddy,
We're back. Yeah, you did for a second. We're back. We're good. We're good.
but yeah, so I mean, and it was just I hit the ground running. So at that time, I'd also in real life, I was already on my own. I'd already my dad was never a part of my life, and my mom decided I shouldn't be at the house anymore. So I was on my own from 14 on. So at 15 years old, I had a buddy that I had a learner's when I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a buddy that rented a U-Haul for me, and I decided, well, Rey Mysterio's the cruiserweight champion. WCW's got the power plant in Georgia, so I'm just going to drive cross country and move to Georgia and win the cruiserweight title. So
Wow. Solid.
yeah,
I love the
I thought it
logic.
was a sound idea. Still to this day, I think it's pretty much the most sound idea anybody's ever had. So yeah, at 15 years old, I loaded up what little stuff I had, and my grandparents lived in Macon, Georgia. So I moved myself cross country so I could win the cruiserweight title.
I love it. I love it. I don't think it worked out, but I think things worked out in general
Well,
for
and
you
I'll still
overall.
say so. Like I was fortunate enough that when I got here, I became friends with pretty quickly. I became friends with Jason Cross and John Phoenix, who were big indie names here in Georgia. Jason Cross, both of them, but Jason Cross I love him to death. He's the biggest waste of talent I've ever seen. He's just so grossly talented, but had no clue how good he was. So he kind of just like everything just came to him naturally. So he never had to work hard.
Right.
So he took a lot of
Right.
stuff for granted. And if he had my work ethic, I'll always say, because like him and AJ Styles were neck and neck here in Georgia, and that was like the big Georgia feud was AJ and Cross. Jason Cross was more athletically gifted than AJ. AJ just worked hard. If Cross had my work ethic, Jason Cross would be the one, at Mania, and he just would. But at the time, both Cross and Phoenix, who are still dear friends to me, I mean, I'm still close to them today. They were working for Wildside, which at the time was a WCW developmental. And so they got me into Wildside. So I'll say to this day, if WCW would have lasted one more year, I definitely would have at least had some WCW work. I was fortunate enough to get into the power plant and do a couple things there, which is super cool. Just kind of like, I get it. You hear that, Miss Bradshaw? But yeah, if to this day, I'm not saying I would have made a better Nitro. I would have got that Saturday night show. Like I would, yeah,
Hey, there
yeah,
you
yeah.
go.
I would have definitely at least got to be beat up by Free Cat on Saturday night.
Hey, and we would have
Yeah,
took it. We would have
absolutely.
took it. Tank Abbott would have took some liberties, but we would have took it. So obviously you didn't make it to WCW because they closed their doors. But you became a fixture, and I do mean a fixture, in the very early days of Ring of Honor. What was it like breaking in with such a young company? And on the backside of that, how happy are you to see ROH here 20 years later in 2025, still thriving? And honestly, Tony Khan's giving it new life.
It's a beautiful thing. So like again, you don't get to pick your age. I broke into wrestling at the perfect time and the worst time all at once, right? Like I
Yeah,
genuinely think, if I was 3 years older when I broke in, like I truly feel I would have at least got a look at by WCW. It's just, by the time I got any kind of footing, the company was going under.
right.
But 5 years before that, I would have been too small to get booked anywhere, right? But like right as I'm breaking into wrestling and really doing it, so I turned 18 in 2000. WCW closes in March of 2001, right? So like I'm not I'm now legal enough to vote when WCW goes under. And ECW's right behind it. So like these two other options are gone. And it's just like
Right.
all this talent is now flooding the indies, and a lot of us, a lot of guys don't know where to go. And then Ring of Honor opened up, and I was fortunate enough that I was doing Wildside, which was on Gabe's radar. And Jimmy Rave, who was my best friend, and to this day, I still consider him my best friend. He was the one that kind of helped me transition to getting booked up north. Living in Georgia was a blessing and a curse in that I was booked every weekend. I had all sorts of bookings, right? I was, again, I'm 18 years old. I'm 120 pounds and 90 of it's hair. Clearly, all of that's changed. Yeah, and I wasn't very business savvy. Uh, I kind of just let my work speak for itself and I wasn't as well rounded as a self promoter back then as I am now. And
Right.
Jimmy was really the one that was like, hey, let me help you put a demo reel together. He started getting booked for Ian Rotten. He started getting booked for CZW. And because we were friends and he was lonely, he was like, well, let me help you get booked so you can come with me. And so, and that's really the genesis of all of it. But watching Ring of Honor, like that became the spot almost immediately. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
uh, I just remember the buzz because at the end of '01, they did the best of the indies in California. And it was the best of the indie tournament. And I believe AJ was booked for it, right? And AJ was kind of the guy that AJ had that cup of coffee at the end of WCW. Then he came back to Georgia, but he was kind of like everybody knew, like that was the golden child, right? You kind of wanted
Yeah,
you kind of
absolutely.
I mean, there was just no question. AJ was amazing, and you wanted to get as much knowledge as you could from AJ, and even which is incredible to look at just back then because AJ was still figuring out who AJ was, right? But like
Right.
it was just one of those things that like everybody kind of got it, like that's the guy. And I'm pretty sure AJ did the best of the indie tournament, and he came back and he's telling us these tales of Brian Danielson and Spanky and Christopher Daniels, and while I was familiar with them, I wasn't as tuned in as AJ because AJ was working with them, right? And
Right.
so when Ring of Honor came to be, AJ was the one with the foresight to be like, this is the place you're going to want to be. Like, do what you can to get on this. So that first show was met with so much anticipation, even from me down here in the South. And it's just funny to think about how different the world is, right? Just like, because
Yes.
when that first show happened, it's not like we could stream it and watch it. We had to, like, we had to order it from RF Video and had to wait 4 weeks to get the DVD. And then it was, at the time, me, Tony Santorelli, who ended up getting a WWE developmental deal for a while here in Deep South, Todd Sexton, who's a Georgia stalwart. All three of us had an apartment in Atlanta. And I think Todd was the elder statesman, like 22 years old, right? The three of us kids had an apartment, but within the southern indie world, we were the only young guys that weren't living at home. So like that was the place to be. So like when we got this DVD, I mean, you would have thought it was the Garden for, Survivor Series 96. I mean, it was a sellout, right? I mean, we had people, they were hanging from the rafters in our two-bedroom apartment just to get a seat, just to see what Red and SATs, the Briscoe, like, oh, we got to see this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's funny looking back on it because I mean, legitimately, there was probably 20 of us packed into that room to watch this DVD. I mean, it was just like, that's the place. We want to be there. We want to be there. We got to figure out how to get there. And out of us, I did a couple pre-show matches, but Jimmy and I are the only ones that really got a run at ROH, which, my run would have never been possible without Jimmy. And, I owe him till the day I die for opening up those doors for me. But it was one of the best compliments I ever got was from Gabe. It was Brian and Cabana were doing an hour. I was fortunate enough to have enough self awareness to know and look around the slot room, right? And it's CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Brian Danielson, Roderick Strong, Austin Aries. I mean,
Man,
the litany of stars, like Brian Kendrick was there, Jamie Noble was there, the Briscoes, like all who's who.
you talk about a
Yeah,
who's
it's
who. Yes,
stupid the
exactly.
amount of talent. And I'd look around, I'd be like, and me, like one of these things is not like the other, right? So like I took advantage of every moment I could. So like anytime, like as soon as my match was done and I had the moment to, talk to whomever I needed to, I was at the curtain watching the show, right? And I knew Brian and Cabana were doing an hour, so I'm at the curtain. And Gabe walks up to me and he goes, Sal, you're the most reliable guy I have. And I was like, well, thank you. And he goes, I never have to look for you. You're either working on your match or you're watching the show. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm getting paid to watch this. 2 years ago, I was buying these DVDs. Now you're giving me American currency to watch these shows. Like, I beat the system.
I was just about to say you're
Yeah,
stealing at this
absolutely.
point.
But yeah, so like, I mean, that Ring of Honor locker room was just, there's only two times in my career that I've had this feeling. It was then, and then it's when the NWA, the reboot, when Billy took over for the NWA, is the only two locker rooms I've ever been in where it's pro wrestling, so there's always egos, but a lot of the egos were checked at the door because we were all fighting for a greater good. We all wanted the company to
Yeah.
succeed, top to bottom. I mean, it was just a series of guys busting their butts to get the company to the next level. I mean, and that Ring of Honor locker room, man, that was definitely, yeah. I mean, it was just such a special environment, and it's so great. I was just at Collision Saturday, and just getting to see the ROH brand. And there's like, I got 3 or 4 friends. Well, I got a lot of friends that are doing. they're involved in the new Ring of Honor, Tony Khan's version of Ring of Honor. And like, it's
Right.
just so cool to see those letters still have meaning to people, Like,
Absolutely.
I'm very much a footnote in the history of the company, but like, I still helped build the company, as
Agreed 100%.
it may have only been a brick or two that I laid for the foundation, but like I did it. And so like just to see it thrive is so cool. And like every time, like I said, I've got friends that are with Ring of Honor, and just like this last Saturday, I got to help put together one of the matches for Honor Club. And it's so cool that it's still reaching more and more people, almost by the day. It's very
Yeah.
much a point of pride for me to
Yeah.
just be associated.
Absolutely. And this is the Fans View podcast, so I want to give the fans perspective. I was at the show in Charlotte as well. I was in the seats. I was covering it as media, and people still believe in that brand to the point where, I mean, obviously they tape Ring of Honor before and a little bit after the Collision. There wasn't It's not like the WWE where nobody's in their seat until it's TV
Yeah,
time. People were there. They were supporting Ring of Honor. They stayed after Collision to support Ring of Honor. So, I know you're a humble guy, and you want to understate your position in building that foundation. But I mean, yeah, you guys did something right. I'll say that. You did something right for it to still be as important today as it was in
and
2005.
the one thing I'll always say is, I mean, look at where everybody went, right? I mean, it,
Exactly.
you're not going to see another roster of that much talent where you just start listing off names. It's like, oh, he was there, he was there, he was. Oh my god, right? Like that's genuinely influenced and changed the way the whole bit. What was the main event of the first Raw? That's not just me being like I'm very partial to the brand. I am, but
There's good reason. Yeah, you throw a rock in that locker room and you hit a
yeah,
Hall of
I mean
Famer.
both of those guys were ROH World Champs, right? Like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
at some point it's got to stop being coincidence, and it's just got to start being the reality that like ROH completely changed what pro wrestling is viewed.
1,000%. I agree with you. So, moving on from your time in ROH, obviously, you bounced around a little bit. You were kind of a rolling stone, a mercenary, if you will. You spent some time in ROH and FIP, you were in the beginning of. Obviously, you spent a little time in TNA. You're with the NWA now. You started, like you said, with NWA Wildside. I have to tell this story because it blew my mind. Obviously, I think the world of Sal Rinauro. And I was at a TNA house show one time, and I go to the merch table, and I see Sal Rinauro of the Wrestling Road Diaries. Can you talk a little bit about how you found yourself at the merch table of
Well,
TNA?
so in 2010, so just to back up a little bit, it's funny. So in '05 is when Mama Luke and I won the ROH tag titles, right? And
Yes. Yep.
which again, like we won the tag titles on the same show that Joe wrestled Kobashi, which is insane, right? Like that to this day, like not only that, but it's in the Manhattan Center. And when you're talking to a lifelong fan like me, like I remember walking into the
Yes.
Manhattan Center and just like it's just to peel the curtain back a little bit. I had heard rumblings that Mama Luke and I were going to win the tag titles that night, and it was just rumblings. I had no clue showing up because, like, if
Wow.
you go back and look at the advertising, the show was advertised as myself first month,
Okay.
and then we did a little hung kong foolery, and we ended up doing the time title match where we beat Jimmy Jacobs and BJ Whitmer. But like, just walking into Manhattan Center, like this is where the first Monday Night Raw was, right? Like, dude, right there is where Shawn Michaels hit Mr. Perfect with a car. Like, what are we doing here? Right? Like this is like so I'm literally like you couldn't tell me anything, right? Like I'm on seventh heaven already. And it's Joe and Kobashi. And like Jamie's there, who like Jamie Noble and I have this weird friendship which makes no sense that I'm friends with Jamie Noble, but like We are friends, which is insane to me. And I've got some fun Jamie Noble stories if you want them at some point. But like, like what is life, right? But anyway, so Mama Luke and I win the tag titles. My firstborn son, my eldest, was born in December of '05, right after Mama Luke and I lose the tag titles. I go to Japan in January of '06, and I'm gone for like 2 months, right? So like my son will never say he hates pro wrestling. And I don't even think he's consciously knows that he hates pro wrestling, that he has no interest in pro wrestling. Well, in 2010, my ex and I are, she's having our second child. And I was like, okay, I've learned from my mistakes. At this point, I'd already been in the business, working over a decade. I've done WWE stuff. I bumped in every major ring in America. I've traveled overseas. Like I'm 5'7", 170 pounds. No, man, my fear was always being the bitter veteran in the locker room that like, oh, pro wrestling owes me. Like, just give me one more shot. I'm 98, but I think I got another run in me, right? Like that was always my fear. So like when we were getting close to the due date, I was like, okay, maybe I just need to take a step back and maybe I just need to let it breathe a little bit and I don't need to be on the road as much and like I'm not going to make the same mistakes with this one as I did the first one. And so
Right.
I never used the hard R. I never retired, right? I never used that word. I didn't believe in it, but I definitely was mentally taking a sabbatical and I would take bookings here and there, but I wasn't actively seeking work. Well,
Right. Yeah.
TNA had come to Macon, and like I said, I'm fortunate. I've been very blessed to just know a lot of the right people at the right time, I guess. And so they're 10 minutes up the road. And so I've got guys like, hey, come to the show, come hang out, come visit, come hang out, come visit. So okay, fine, you got me. You guys got catering on. So I'm literally just there to visit. I came in with Jimmy, and I'm just visiting friends and catching up, and just a lot of people that I hadn't seen in a long time that I'd come up through the indies with, and then gone to war with, or just laughed with, whatever. And
Right.
in the course of this, somebody had mentioned that they were short some people at the merch stand, and I was like, screw it, I'm here, I'll help. And they're like, for real? And I was like, I mean, I get to go shopping afterward. But yeah, I mean, I'll be more than happy to, I'll be more, like I'm already here. So
Yeah.
I go up to the merch stand and they kind of just throw me into the fire and I'm in my element, right? I mean, it's a pro wrestling crowd. Like, there's not many things I know. I will not sit here and tell you I'm a genius. I know pro wrestling. At this point, if I don't know it, I'm in trouble because it's all I've studied, right? So I kind of just know how to talk to people, and in that element, I'm very extroverted anyway. So I bringing people to the table, and I'm selling shirts. And Don West, who had known me from all the explosions I had done and the impact jobs or whatever, when we were done, he pulls me aside. And he goes, "Man, you're better at this than I thought you'd be." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't." You're wrong. Like, I'm selling Hulkamania shirts. It's not that hard. Like,
Right.
what are we doing? He was like, have you ever thought about doing something like this full time? And I was like, never even had the thought. And he goes, well, we might be looking for someone to go on the road full time with us. If you're interested, let me know. And I was like, we don't, I'm interested right now. Like, we don't have to put this off. Like, if you're offering a full time gig to do this, I'm absolutely interested. He said, okay. And within 2 weeks, I was full time with TNA at the merch table, which was awesome because I was still in the wrestling business. I was getting a weekly check for the most part. There was sometimes I got that empty envelope, like, oh, we forgot to send it. Like, I bet you did.
Not dogging a
Yeah,
handshake, pal.
yeah. But I'm full time, living full time off pro wrestling without having to fall down to do it.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of the perks. I was getting the travel. I was getting the frequent flyer miles. I was getting, I was getting to be at the shows, like especially at the time because like the merch crew traveled with like the referees and the agents. So like I got to become real good friends with like D'Lo Brown and Earl Hebner, which like you tell, you know, 13-year-old Sal, like, these are going to be your friends. Like, no way, right? So, like, it was awesome. It was such, we had so, like, we, it got to the point where me and one of the other guys that was it was basically me and two other people that were full-time merch. We ended up, we were around each other so often. We had our own lingo to this day. Like, because one of them was Danny Deals, who's with the NWA now, too. So, but like perfect example, we would share road, just war stories about, stuff we'd seen on the indies. And I was telling him like, especially back in the early 2000s, because I would make my own compilation tapes and DVDs of just stuff,
Right.
so like my merch table wasn't just Sal Rinauro stuff. I'd have, the best of the NWO and the best of Jusha Thunderline. Well, whatever I could get my hands on to sell. I was making all these tapes and selling as well. And without a doubt, every time at a show, someone would come up to my table and go, "He's dead. He's in TNA. He's dead. Raven, Nevermore." And I don't know why, but they would always pick out Raven, and it was always Raven Nevermore. And I was like, why? And so I'm telling this story to Danny, and he's like, "You see it too." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is the thing." I don't know why Raven's the one guy that like Southern wrestling fans would pick out and be like, "Nevermore." So like that just became a thing where like when things were over or when they were done or when they were never more, we would just go Raven and we'd laugh hysterically. Just, stuff like that, which is like to this day, we'll still, he just, so, because I did Dynamite last week in Asheville. And the last time I was in that
Mhm.
building was a TNA house show. And I completely forgot about all of this until I walked into the building and I was like, man, last time we were here, the truck, the truck we were in, the gas tank had a leak and we were stranded in this building. Like they had shut the building down and we're just kind of there we're waiting on Bob Ryder to get us a new rental. And like we were getting the run around and it was just a total nightmare. Like I had all these memories flooding back. I completely had forgotten until I laid eyes on that building. And so I hit Danny up immediately. I was like, "Hey, you remember Asheville?" And he was like, "Tell me about it." I was like, "The gas tank." And he was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "I know."
I love that so much.
But yeah, I mean, what a fun time we had selling merch. And like we would play a game where TNA was really good about getting merch for everybody. Like if you were on the roster, you got some kind of shirt. Some of them were winners. Some of them were absolute stinkers. I was real good friends with Gunner, who had come up through the Georgia Indies. He was still Shatter. He'll always be Shatter to me. But he gets the TNA deal. And so, like, I always try to look out for my boy and sell his shirts. But his first shirt was, I mean, it was tan. It was a tan wrestling shirt with like a dirt colored logo. So we're talking brown on tan. They're like, "Look, guys, if you didn't want to sell shirts, you could just not made this." So I would take it upon myself to be like, "This weekend I'm going to sell 5 Gunner shirts." And like, and that would be the goal, right? Because again, it's not hard to sell a Hulkamania shirt,
Right.
you know,
Right.
but like to sell a Gunner shirt, you got to put some work in. Uh,
Yeah.
and sure enough, I mean, I can't say I hit the number every weekend, but some weekends I was like, "Look at this. I sold 10. I sold 10 Gunner shirts." One of my favorite moments, we were uh we were in West Virginia. And I can't remember the town, but we killed it. I mean, we just keep in mind at the time, TNA's business was awful. I mean, just we would show up to buildings and get ready to set up, and the flyers for the show that were sent to the building to be put out were still wrapped up behind a desk somewhere. So like nobody's promoting this show at all, right? I would go to the
Right.
gas station across the street to get an energy drink, and they'd be like, "Oh, what are you in town for?" I'm with TNA Wrestling, and they're like, "Oh, when's that?" I'm like, tonight."
Like
Yeah,
15.
yeah. They're like, "I had no idea." Great. But like merch, we would blow it out, man. Like we were making a killing. And one of my favorite moments, we were in West Virginia, and I wish I could remember the city, but I just remember we got done with the night, and I mean we smoked it. And Don is standing there. God, I love Don West. And Don goes, "Boys, if they made a video game for selling merch, you guys would have won it. You're doing video game numbers out here." And like his big thing was always like the per head, right? Like, oh, WWE's doing $8 per head. And he goes, "Boys, you guys are doing $27 a head." And I'd be like, God dang. I mean, granted, we only got 14 people in the building, so it's not that hard. You sell a couple of those $450 world title replicas.
Sir. Yes. Sir. Hey, we can sling a lot of mud at TNA, man, but those
Oh,
deals,
but
those deals were
the deals
something.
by Dawn were the best. I mean, and this is like we had a good time. There's a lot of times we just knew what we were working with. Like a lot of that stuff became out of our hands. Like I wish we could do this. You want to do this, but at the end of the day, uh, it's not. You're not putting your name on the check. So you show up and you do the best job you can do, and you let the rest of the chips fall where they may.
Right.
And
Yeah, I can't tell you how many brown bags Don West has
funny,
sold me in his
funny those
day.
brown bags. My favorite was at one point there was a printing error with the company, and we ended up getting blue bags.
I think I might
Yeah.
have one of those
So
too.
like we would try to count like we had a bunch of loose action figures at the warehouse. And so it got to the point where I was just like, throw three figures in a bag. It's the blue bag special. So then we had a blue bag and a brown bag. I'd see guys walking out of the show and they'd have one on each shoulder. And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
someone's having them a good day.
Yeah. Ugh. You guys, I gotta give you credit. You guys are some damn
Yeah, we
salesmen.
the hustle was real. The hustle was real.
You couldn't knock it though, because TNA always, to me, like again from the fans' perspective, it was like WWE was where you went if you wanted to spend a couple thousand
Yes,
dollars. TNA was TNA was more for the fans. For $50, TNA would sell you a backstage
absolutely.
pass.
Oh, that's the thing. It's like, and it's one of those. Well, we kind of had to do it to get some kind of money going.
People in
But
the
at the end of the day, like
right,
the fans won, right? Like you're getting more bang for your buck,
right,
which like it didn't hurt us any. And I mean, plus like it's one of those like you're building experiences for the next time because like if you would have told if I'm 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old or whatever, and I get to go to a show, and for 50 extra bucks you can go backstage and meet Kurt Angle and Sting and AJ Styles and Bobby Roode and
yeah,
James Storm. Like, buddy, I'll give you 100, do it twice. Like, what are we doing, right?
yes,
Uh,
yes,
and then and like again, I mean, there were just so many. Like, I got to know Jeff Jarrett really well during some of that TNA run. To this day, Jeff, like I was a Jeff Jarrett again, bumping heels, flashy, flashy bumping heels. That was my jam, right? So like
yeah,
to this day, like I said, I just did. So I was backstage and booked for World's End, Dynamite, and Collision this last week. And all 3 days, Jeff came up to me and said, "Hey, Sal, good to see you." And all three times, I was just like, oh, Jeff Jarrett knows my name, right? Like, and like, it's just crazy because I get to talk to Jeff, like, just Saturday, like getting to pick his mind.
yeah.
I stopped him early in the day on Saturday. I was like, "All right, Jeff, I got one for you." He goes, "Lay it on me." And I was like, "Look, I've seen all your TV stuff. Like, I've gone back and watched comp tapes of your stuff from Memphis. Obviously, I've watched all your WWE stuff. I watched all your WCW stuff. Hell, I was there for half the TNA stuff. Like, I don't want you to tell me your favorite TV matches. I've probably seen it 14 times. Tell me some of your favorite house show matches." And he was like, "Dang." And I was like, "I don't need an answer right now. Take your time. But by the end of the night, you and I need to have this talk." And he was like, "Okay." And so he struts away. Maybe he did it, but in my brain, Jeff Jarrett's constantly strutting. That's
He
Yeah,
probably definitely did
yeah, he
strut away.
just strutted away. That's how life should be. So later on in the night, he goes, "Okay, I'm going to give you a couple." I was like, "Lay it on me." He goes, "Well, there's a couple loops in Memphis where I was teaming with Brian Christopher and we were working the Moondogs, and we had to go 45 minutes, and we were just walking and talking." And he goes, "Man, I learned so much. It was so much fun. I really loved those." I was like, "Okay, now you're talking my language." And he goes, "In WWE, there was a couple loops where it was like him and Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon and Bret Hart." And he goes, "We run around the loop, doing those tag matches." And he goes, "Buddy," he goes, "I don't think I'm bad, but when you're in the ring with those three guys, you're the fourth. You're the fourth best by proxy." And I'm like, "God." And he goes, and in TNA, I really liked working the house shows with Kurt Angle because on the house shows he didn't hurt me. For us to be like, it's crazy. It's just crazy that I've been able to like this relationship with Jeff Jarrett where I can have these conversations with him, right? Because at the end of the day,
Right.
like this podcast is kind of perfect for me because I'm just a fan. Like, I took my fandom to the next level, but like at the end of the day, I'm a fan of pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling, right? Like it's my
Absolutely.
favorite. So like getting to have these relationships with these guys, like it still blows my mind. And like that TNA run while I was doing merch is the first time because when I came into pro wrestling, it was not acceptable to be a mark per se, right? And I don't
Right.
like the term
Right.
mark, but like in the locker room, you're not allowed, like it wasn't cool to take the pictures or ask the questions. You kind of just,
Yeah.
especially when you were young and small like me, you kind of just shut up and sat in the corner. But that
Right.
TNA run is kind of where I was like, screw it, like take the picture, ask the questions, right? So like that's how Earl Hebner and I got to be close because I every time Earl would walk by, I would just throw a name at him, tell me a story, right? And I just saw Earl again at WrestleCade, and
Okay.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then again, I mean, it was just a big hug. It's like it was so cool to see Earl again. And I love Earl. I love Brian Hebner. Those are two of my favorite people. And I told Earl, I was like, "Earl, you told me this Randy Savage story once. It's one of my all-time favorite stories." And he goes, "Is it the rope one?" And I go, "Absolutely, it's the rope one." I go, "Old time steak, tell it to me again." And so I think you'll appreciate the story. So Savage is working Hacksaw Jim Duggan. It's a house show wherever, right? And they're blah 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 blah. Hacksaw's down. Savage goes up top to drop the elbow for the finish. Well, Savage goes up top and slips for whatever reason. Who knows why? Like he doesn't fall like in a perilous predicament or anything. He goes to the top rope, slips, lands on his feet, puts a couple boots to Hacksaw, goes back up top, drops the elbow. 1, 2, 3, they're out. They get to the back, and as soon as they get to the back, Savage grabs Earl and goes, "Next time I'm on the top rope, and you think you're going to hit the ropes, I'm going to have to do something to you." And Earl goes, "What? I'm not doing drop down leapfrog drills out here." Like, what do you mean hit the ropes? And he goes, "Well, I'm the macho man and I don't fall. Someone had to hit the ropes and I was looking at Duggan. Why are you hitting the ropes on me, Earl?" And Earl's like, so in my brain, I just picture Earl like, "Oh, Randy Savage is going up top. Here we go."
Love that. Oh, I'm so glad you told that story.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's crazy to just talk to Earl about these stories, right? Like, it's just,
Right.
that's the best to me. It's just like, especially like when they see me as their peer, and like
Yeah.
it's very very cool. I'm a very lucky dude because like, man, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm just a fan. I mean, this like I love pro wrestling and getting to have these relationships with these people is why.
Yeah. I love that you say that, and I can tell that it's not just lip service because your excitement when you talk about wrestling really shines through. I love that so
Yeah,
much.
no, it's just I honestly think it's one of the things that, like, to fast forward a little bit. So like I'm working at the NWA now. I'm not just talent. I'm also an agent, and
Right.
and like when I start helping guys put their match, or guys or girls or whatever, all encompassing. When I'm helping people put their matches together, like,
There you
yeah,
go.
there's times where like we'll start getting into the weeds and I'll start getting excited. And like, oh, and then we can do this, and then we'll buy, and then maybe you come in and then you do this and one, two, oh, I really think my excitement is something that they appreciate because like I can't wait to see them do it, right? And like if I'm into it, then they're into it. And if they're into it, then the crowd's into it, and like nobody loses.
That's absolutely absolute facts.
Yeah, it's contagious. It's just but like it's only because like it comes from a place of love. I love pro wrestling. I can't quantify it. I can't explain it. It's my favorite.
It, like I said, it absolutely shows through. I think that's one of the more endearing parts of your personality is just that excitement when you're talking about wrestling. It gets me excited. Like I just want to sit here for 3 more hours and talk about all the stories because man, the stories you
Yeah,
could tell me.
there's millions of them.
One thing I absolutely have to get in is the Wrestling Road
Yeah.
Diaries. Honestly, it was my introduction to you. What was that like working on something? Obviously, at the time, maybe you didn't know that it would become just this cult classic, but did you know you were doing something special when you
Absolutely.
guys were filming it?
Take you back to when it all happened. Cabana pulls me aside. We were doing Ring of Honor TV tapings at the ECW arena, which again, I've been lucky enough to work at the ECW arena more times than I can count. And I can't tell you how many times. It's been way more often than not. Every time I walk into that building, I find the stairs and I go, "Do you want to be at the show? This is the show." And I laugh to myself, right? Because like it's the ECW arena. Uh, but so like just every time there, I mean, and they've renovated it. And it's actually a very nice building now. It used to not be a nice
Yeah, it
building,
is.
but it was still so magical just because it was what it was, right? But so like I was always just so super happy to be there. But Cabana pulls me aside, and this is right when Cabana was coming back from his WWE run, and Brian had just signed. So like it's almost a ship's passing in the night paradox. Cabana
Right.
lays this idea out to me. He goes, "I want to kind of film this thing. He goes, "But I think we're missing something. We need a third person." He goes, "I'm very interested in you if you'd like to do it. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I was like, "Dude, why are you asking? Just tell me when we start. Like, what are you talking about? Am I interested in it? This would be amazing, right?"
Absolutely.
And it's one of those things where it's very funny because it's the perfect glimpse into the reality of what our weekly lifestyle was. We didn't do anything special for this filming. It's not like we pulled out all the lions and tigers and bears. What you saw is what we did every weekend.
Right.
The insanity of the road to us just trying to figure out ways to not kill each other to all of it is as 100% pure, honest, and as real as it gets, right? And it's fortunate that like I've just always been able to like Cabana and Brian and I always just had this relationship where like we just got along, right? Like we might not have been each other's favorite people at every moment of the day, but like we've just always had a really good relationship. I've always enjoyed their friendship. I've always enjoyed all the time I've got to spend with them, even when Brian was bullying me. Because don't to make no mind about it, Brian Danielson is low key the biggest bully in the history of pro wrestling. I don't want that to be slept on. But like no, and so like, but it was just one of those things that we were just filming it. It's the same thing we always did. There just happened to be somebody there with a camera. There was nothing
Right.
different. It was as pure and as honest as it could be. But when we got done filming, I remember when I got dropped off at the airport and I'm headed to my plane and I was like, oh, we just did something special. Like
Yes.
if what we got on tape translate, I really think like, and especially at that time, I was like, this is probably going to be the last great thing I do in pro wrestling. Uh, like I really thought like, man, we did something really, really cool here. Especially,
Yeah.
and at that time, just, with Brian going to WWE and then they changed his name. And, I always knew Brian was special, but like to watch him ascend to the levels that he did, like I couldn't have even predicted that.
Yeah,
and just, watching Cabana continue to thrive on the indies. And then, it's just, it's such a great, like it's one of those things that, like, I think if I had to do a time capsule, I would love to just put that movie in there. And 30 years from now, like, that's
absolutely.
like, I would love, because I think it still would be relatable, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Still holds up for sure. Because, like you said, you had Cabana coming off the train wreck of the Scotty
Yep.
Goldman run in the WWE. You had Bryan about to embark on his WWE, journey. You were the steady hand. You were the indie,
That was the journeyman.
you were the
Yeah.
indie guy. Yeah, exactly. That was the word I was looking for. Was the journeyman. I don't mean any disrespect by that, but you
That's
were
what I
you
am.
were
Yeah.
the man on the indies at that time. So, it was just such a perfect
Yeah.
storm. And then you have Cabana, who is Don West is number one, maybe Sal Rinauro is number two. But man, Colt Cabana is a
Yeah.
hell of a
That
salesman.
I've got three islands off the Keys and Cabana sold me. You do what you want with that.
Yeah, I mean, and Cabana, had the art of wrestling at that time
Yeah.
to promote
Yeah.
that because that was just you guys. That wasn't like this big company behind the Wrestling Road Diaries.
Absolutely.
So I just think it was just such a perfect storm of things around you, and I mean, he couldn't have picked a better three guys. And to say that is easy, but I think it was demonstrated too because Cabana being the worker he is, he tried to catch lightning in a bottle a second and a third time and I don't think they worked out quite as well, as that magic that you guys had.
Outside of the Ninja Turtles franchise, which I will to this day, Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze might be my all-time favorite film. There's no sequel that's better than the original.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
this is just the case. That's no slight at the other guys that did the other Road Diaries, but I mean that.
Yeah, I think it was Gallows and Compton. So
Yes,
he
yes,
tried
no,
hard, but it's just couldn't recapture that magic that you like I said, that lightning in a bottle. It's so cliche to say, but it's a cliche for a reason.
absolutely no. And it was just, I mean, it really just, and there was just so many guys, that were featured, that were again. I mean, you walk into a locker room and there's, I mean, oh, who's of pro wrestling. I
Ex-
mean, it was just, yeah,
yep.
it was just perfect. Timing couldn't have been better.
I agreed. It's perfect. I hate to say it, Cabana's gonna get another $15 out of me because I'm pretty sure he's the only person you can get the Wrestling Road Diaries through, and I have to watch it again
Yeah,
now that we're
no, it's
talking about it.
funny. So this summer I was doing some AEW stuff, and Cabana pulls me aside. He goes, hey, are you here next week? And I was like, yeah, I actually am. He goes, good. I've got 50 DVDs I need you to sign. He goes, I've already signed him. I've already got Brian's signature. I just need you to sign him. I was like, bring them on, buddy.
God, I love Colt
Yeah,
so much. I've gotten to know him a little smidge, but my God, is he just a wonderful
yeah,
human
I love
being.
Cabana.
So to bring it kind of back to present day, obviously you're like you said, you're an active participant or a worker. You're an agent for the NWA. I mean, Sal, you're no spring chicken anymore, buddy. What is it that keeps you motivated? I see your promos on Instagram. I see what you do, in the ring. How you're still working your ass off. What motivates you to keep doing that?
It's, I mean, part of it's just the love. I still love doing it. Part of it is, I still kind of eat, breathe, sleep pro wrestling, and part of it is it's twofold. One, like I still want to show my kids that if you work hard, good things happen. Like it takes the work, and sometimes the work's not fun. Like what you see on Instagram, what you see, the matches and all that stuff is awesome. It's fun, but like you don't see the alarm waking me up at 5 a.m. because I got to go do 40 minutes of cardio and tan and, putting in the time at the gym and the 5 hour drive here to turn around so I can get to the next town. That's not stuff you see, but my kids do see it. So I want them to, part of it is I want them to see that, like, no, I do this work, I work this hard because at the end of the day, there's a payoff to it. I'm not just working hard to work
Yeah.
hard. And the other part of it is like I've got one more real big bucket list thing. I think it's feasible that I want to cross off my list. And until I do, I just have to keep working, because that's my mentality. Is I'm not a guy that asks for favors. I'm very much a guy that will work hard until I get what I want. I have my goals and I want to reach them. And the thing I'm talking about is my big like my big thing is I really want to be the NWA World Junior Champ. Uh, you know,
Yes. All right.
it's just one of those things where it was promised to me years ago, and life happens, didn't come through.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like I don't have room on my carry-on for that kind of luggage. So I don't have any ill will about it. It just didn't work out for whatever reason. But I was there the night Jimmy Rave won the World Junior for the first time. And that was a really big deal to him, and it was a real big deal to me. And when I lost, Jimmy passed away in 21, and like I said, he's still my best friend. Like I still talk to him, text him and stuff. Which is, I hope somebody doesn't have his phone number because that'd be really weird. Because I send a lot of inappropriate things like people don't get. They're like, I hope this isn't someone's 8-year-old child because they're gonna have questions. But I really like. I'm still close with his wife, and his son was born like 4 months before my second, and like I still have a relationship with them, and I really want to be able to win the world junior title, not just for myself, which obviously I do, just because, again, being the fan that I am, I want my name in the record book, right? Like I remember I used
Right.
to get the
Absolutely.
the PWI annual, the almanac, and I would study. Like to this day, like I don't know if I could do it with a lot of the modern stuff, but like I can chronologically list the WWE champions and the Intercontinental champions, and like just because like I used to study these things, and so like just
Yeah.
to have my name in the record book as the world junior champ, for me, that's like awesome. But like just to bring that title back for my kids to see and for little Jimmy to see and for Felicia to see one more time would be like, that's kind of everything for me. And that's the motivation, is to get to the place where I can do that.
Man, that is amazing. I guess you kind of answered my next question is what is 2025? Obviously, we're 8 days in now. What does 2025 hold for Sal Rinauro?
Fun. So like again, like I'll keep doing this until it's no longer fun. And I'm having more fun 26 years in. Is it 26? Yeah. May will be 26 years I've been doing this. And yeah, I'm old. May will be 26 years, and I'm having more fun now than I've ever had. I like, and that's not to diminish all the fun I've had before this, because
Yeah.
it's just wild, when I take a step back and think of all the stuff I get to do, like
Right.
this what, Friday, 2 days from now, I'm boarding a plane to go to Texas for an NWA show, right? Like, and I get to, like Billy Corgan, who's like a legit rock star, like not just like a pro wrestling guy, but like legitimate rock star, calls me and talks to me about pro wrestling. Like, life makes no sense, right? And like, that's crazy. Like, one of the other agents is Dr. Tom, who like just the sidebar, like again, the new generation was it's my little secret, right? It's my favorite era of pro wrestling. I was at WrestleMania 12. The opening match was the Body Donnas winning the tag team titles from the Godwins at the end of the tag title tournament, right? Like, I legitimately love the Body Donnas. And so like, yeah,
Unironically.
right? And so like Dr. Tom, the first couple times he was in, I was like, tell me all the Body Donna stories. And he was like, nobody ever wants to hear a Body Donna story. And I'm like, no, I'm serious, Dr. Tom. Like, I love the Body Donnas. And like, he for months was like, why are you ribbing me? This isn't funny. To the point where uh, we were doing the show, and I was like, all right, Dr. Tom, I will prove to you that I shoot love the body Donnas. Talk to me at the next show. And he goes, okay. So I call my gear guy. I was like, hey, I got to get Body Donna's gear made for the next show. And he's like, what? I was like, please, we'll do my logo and my style, but like, I need the bright blue with the red and the yellow. I need Body Donna's gear. And I didn't smarten up Dr. Tom to it. At the next show, Tom comes in. I go, hey, uh, we're gonna do a couple of pictures later. Do you mind stopping by? I want to just do pictures. He was like, yeah, that's weird. So Tom comes in. As soon as Tom comes in, I take off my pants and reveal my Body Donna's gear. And there's a picture of him choking me out. But like, I get to talk to Dr. Tom about like not just pro wrestling, which is awesome, but like he finally was like, okay, maybe you do like the Body Donnas. I was like, I'm going on pay-per-view with Body Donna's gear. That's what I'm talking about here. But and
My
like I get
gosh.
to do that Saturday, right? I just get to go hang out with Dr. Tom, and I get to talk to Jazz, who's like I remember going to an ECW house show, and watching Jazz beat up Simon Diamond. It's just like he was in a triple threat match for the women's world title at WrestleMania, like, and now she just calls me, hey Sal, great to see you, and it's just like that. That's not how this works. This is not life. So I hope 2025, I just my goal is to just keep having fun, you know, and then obviously uh, get get the world junior title. Like that's it's funny. Just yeah, there's so many titles in pro wrestling. There's so many. Again, I've been
Yeah.
very blessed to do so much. I've wrestled on multiple continents. Yeah, I mean, I've wrestled on Monday Night Raw. I've wrestled, like I've done all these things. I've wrestled on Impact. I've wrestled this guy. I've wrestled that guy. But like the World Junior title is the one that means the most. It means everything to me. And my goal for the year is to even if it's 13 seconds, just
That's all you need. You need that Daniel
yeah,
Bryan title run.
just let the bell ring and have me announced, and then whatever happens from there happens from there.
I love that, man. That's such a beautiful answer because it's genuine. I so appreciate your love. I know I've said it, a couple times now, but I just so appreciate your love and your vigor for professional wrestling.
Like I said, it's my
So,
favorite.
so to kind of take it outside of the ring, and I don't know if we can even do this because I think you just eat, breathe, and sleep wrestling. What do you enjoy of when you're away from the ring? When you're not at the arena, when you're not.
Yeah, so yeah, my kids, I've got my kids now are 19, 14, and then my little girl's 11. And, I spend a lot of time just being dad, which, it is good or bad. Like my 14-year-old, he, he's a scary, scary reminder of who I was at 14. Like I said, my eldest has no interest in pro wrestling. I think it's a subconscious thing. I don't know. But like when WWE Network started, I think Jacob was 3. And so like I'd come home and be like, hey dude, what are you up to? And he's like, I'm watching, Hogan and Adrian Adonis. I'm like, why? What are you doing with your life? Stop it. He'll bring me I'm a figure guy, so by proxy he's a figure guy, which
Yeah,
sucks because now I have to buy 2 of everything, which is the worst. But he'll bring me his cards and his storylines for like the next 6 months, and I go outside, touch some grass. What are we doing?
I love that.
And then my daughter's a cheerleader and she does chorus. And like it's crazy because like all my kids are like in gifted classes and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know where you got that from. I can tell you where you didn't get it from. That much I'm just sure.
I love that. Springboards, yes. Straight A's,
I
no.
just like my senior research paper in high school was we had 3 choices and I can't remember the third one. One was religion, which I was like, not touching. Even in '98, I was like, I'm not touching that. and the other one was
You knew better.
yeah,
All right.
and the other one was natural disasters. So I did a 5-page thesis on earthquake and typhoon.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew it as soon as you
Yeah,
gave me the
yeah,
setup. I
yeah,
knew
no.
it.
All right, what was the boy supposed to do, right? Like that, I got to talk about their title run. I got to talk about them losing it to Money Inc. and the split, everything.
God,
My teacher was not impressed, but it's probably my finest work. But yeah, so like a lot of I love getting to be dad. It's so fulfilling, and then like it's away from the ring, but it's not. But like I'm blessed, and I've got a lot of people that reach out to me to help mentor them. So like, which is how I get in some of these weird group chats that I'm in, where I'm just like, your guys' combined age, it's like 3 people and their combined age isn't mine, and I'm like, how does this? I'm, I'm gonna need a permission slip signed before I respond to your match.
I love that.
So yeah, Uh, the one thing about or there's a couple things, but losing Jimmy in 21 really kind of helped helped me look at my priority. Number one is, like really when Jimmy passed, I wanted to do like most people do. I wanted to post pictures of me and Jimmy, and I realized all
Yeah,
the pictures. I mean, this dude and I were on the road together for 300 days in 2006. And we've got the only pictures we have instead, right? Like we don't have where we just I mean it was different time too. We didn't have camera phones at the time or
yeah,
whatever, but like we don't have any real world pictures just because we
right.
were busy being numbskulls and a lot of foolishness was
A little bit of
yeah, yeah.
tomfoolery. Yeah, I can appreciate it.
But so like I'm real big on taking the picture, and the other one is just live today. Oh, let life happen today. Don't worry about tomorrow because it's not promised. So that's one thing I try to apply to every day. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I got another shot at it. So whatever it may be, let's go. Let's go have fun. Like life is too short not to have fun doing it. So let's figure out a way to have some fun.
I love that so much. And that segues perfectly into the main event question here. It's my favorite question to ask everyone because I feel like people really get to know the person, behind the camera. And that question is this: at this point in your life, in your career, what does the term success mean to you?
And it's a lot, right? I mean, there's obviously the top layer stuff. The world junior title is equivalent to a form of success for me. At this point in my career, I think success kind of lies in everybody that I've helped along the way, right? Getting this agent job with NWA has really, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, better than what's a better feeling than pro wrestling, I almost wouldn't have been able to answer that, right? I tell I've used this promo a couple times. I'm really good at the 3 F's: fighting, fatherhood, and I'll let you guess the third. And sometimes it's not in that order. But like if you would have asked me, what's the best feeling in the world, it's either being a dad or being a pro wrestler. Uh, and that's it, right? Like there's just, but since as I'm transitioning into this agent role, I've really like, I personally get so much happiness and joy when I'm able to teach somebody a trick and then watch them apply it. And then, when that light bulb comes on and like, oh, they have that aha moment. And it's just like, oh man, like we just made art. Like I had a brain
Yeah.
fart. Like I'll have an idea and I'll spit it to somebody and then they can put their twist on it and then they go out and do it and it works. And it's just like, and so like part of success is not just me. It's all the kids I get to work with, watching them grow and watching them become successful. Like I don't want to name drop, but there's guys on a lot of Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Fridays and Saturdays that you see that I've helped influence. Like to this day, like literally, I got a phone call today where I pitched an idea that I don't want to spoil, but if it goes through, the New Day is going to be super, super hated, which is what we want.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to say anything else because I don't know if it's even going to get passed. But if it gets the green light, it's going to be awesome. But like watching stuff like that, or just like there's just a lot of guys that either reach out to me or like I'll have an idea and I could shoot them a text and then like I don't need the credit for it. But like if I have an idea, here's a good example that I'm comfortable sharing. So when New Day did the turn on Big E, Woods, I didn't teach Xavier Woods how to bump, but I basically took over after that. Like I kind of taught him pro wrestling.
Hmm.
I mean, and he's one like my kids call him Uncle Austin. He's so when they were doing the term, we had conversed about ideas or whatever. I watched it live and I texted him immediately after. I was like, "Yeah, that's the go." So the next morning he calls me and we were kind of spitballing ideas back and forth about what we could do, what did you like, this, that, and third. Terry and Cross got brought up, and I was like. It's crazy how many people Karrion Cross has fingerprints on that, like he doesn't get credit for. Like he he's the
Right.
one, like without him, there probably wouldn't have been a Ray and Dominic match at WrestleMania. He's the one that helped turn McIntyre heel. He's the one who made AJ a little more edgier. Like different there's a lot of different pieces that he's been involved in without them directly saying, "Oh, this is." And I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they did something where like they just showed a little clip of like Mysterio accepting the match and and like it pans back and it's a puzzle piece and do the same thing with AJ, do the same thing with Drew, and do the same thing with the Miz, and do the same thing with the New Day, and as these puzzle pieces converge, it becomes Karrion Cross's fate. Which was, oh my god, can I pitch that? And I was like, well, what am I going to do? Keep it? Like who? Like no, you can. No. I think it's a great idea. Pitch it. He goes, I'm pitching. I'm literally pitching it right now. If that's okay. I'm like, what am I going to do with this idea? Like it's just an idea. I don't care. Please, if that makes it to TV, that's success, right? I don't
Yeah.
need my signature on it. Like if I see the genius that company is, be able to put that together, like holy crap, that's success to me, right? So like anytime I get to see something with my fingerprints on and watch it work, that's success. I don't need the credit. I don't need my name on any of it, right? Uh, one of the jokes. So like again, Jimmy Rave, he was my best friend, whatever, whatever. A lot of the stuff Jimmy did was stuff that I vomited out to him, just like, oh, what if you tried this? When he started doing the Styles Clash, that was like, dude, just start doing the Styles Clash. AJ's not there anymore. He's in TNA. And he was like, oh my God. And then like once he lost the Styles Clash, he was like, I need a new finisher. I was like, the pedigree. Nobody hates, and Triple H is the most hated guy, especially the indie fans in that at that time. I was
Yeah.
like, do the pedigree. He was like, yeah,
Yeah.
like when I named gonorrhea because he was from Ghana, and you get hit with it, it's over for you, right? Like things like that. I mean, and I was constantly feeding Jimmy ideas, and the joke was like, the truth will be revealed when you write your book. And Jimmy goes, well, the punchline is you're going to write my book for me. I'm just going to take credit for writing it too. And I was like, yeah, that's probably how it's going to go. But like, that's not stuff like I ever, it's not like when Jimmy would be like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm not a guy where it's like, oh, remember when I came up with that? Like, I don't care. Like, I just want to see good things. I just want to see good pro wrestling, right? Like, if it's something that's cool that fans can connect to, I don't need the credit for it. I want the fans to, I want something that people, like, if I like it, then hopefully they like it. And that's like one thing I do, like,
Yeah.
because I watch pro wrestling with such a critical eye, just because I've been watching it forever. I kind of stopped watching. I
Mm-hmm.
love to watch wrestling with my kids and not say a word
Mm-hmm.
and just see what they react to. And then ask them why.
Right.
Hey, why did you like that? Well, why? So like Pete Dunne's a very, very over guy in the Renaro household. I love Pete Dunne. And so like my son likes Pete Dunne, but I'm like, why do you like Pete? Is it just because like I think he's that dude? Or and he's like, no, and like he'll start breaking down why he likes Pete Dunne. I'm like, okay, well I can selfishly apply that to things I do, and B, like that's the audience they want, right? WWE's been getting
Yeah,
WWE, TNA, all of
exactly.
them, they've been getting my money for 40 plus years now. They don't care about my opinion because they're still going to get my money. They don't care. That's the money they're looking for, right? So I mean,
Exactly.
like I said, Jacob's 14 years old now, so like he's just getting to like that's the money they want to
Yeah,
give.
he's right in their
Exactly.
demographic.
So like, what are you doing? What are they doing that you like? So I can apply that to my thought process going forward, not just for me, but like as an agent, pay it
Right.
forward to the men and women that I'm working with. So, like I said, anytime I'm able to sprinkle something on anything and it works, that's success to me. Whether I get the credit or not, irrelevant. And that's the best. So, like, hopefully, I just get to keep on doing it. As long as people keep on texting me and hey, what do you think about this? Or when I get an idea
Yeah.
and I get a response from that person, that's success.
That's a great answer. I knew you'd come through with a great answer. We're gonna wrap this up, Sal, but I can't let you out of here without talking about we got some new professional wrestling coming to
Yeah,
Georgia here pretty soon. We have Next Level Championship Wrestling, I believe out of Augusta, Georgia. Unfortunately, you were booked to be on the original card January 26th, but there was some issues with the venue, I believe, and it got moved now to February
yeah.
15th in Augusta, Georgia. But you won't be able to join us. Can you tell us a little bit about what you know of Next Level Championship Wrestling and what you think is going to set it apart
Well,
going
I'm
forward?
really excited. So the Augusta area it's a great wrestling market. There's been a couple different promotions that have come through Augusta. I love wrestling in that area. They're hungry for good pro wrestling. The mind
Yes.
behind New Level is again, it's one of those kids that I've kind of got to help mentor along the way, and he's blossoming into his own. I don't know if I'm letting the cat out of the bag or saying something I shouldn't say, but like he's the mind behind Pro South Wrestling in Alabama, and they do great stuff. And now he's getting to spread his wings over in Augusta, and I just think he brings a fresh approach to storytelling, which is my favorite part of pro wrestling. Is it's capturing that emotion, and I think he does a great job with it. And he's got a lot of connections with a lot of very talented people that Augusta may not have seen either lately or ever, then I think,
Yeah.
there's a lot of good talent he's already secured. Like you said, unfortunately, I won't be able to be there February 15th physically, but spiritually, I'll definitely be involved. Just because I'm not on the first one doesn't mean I won't be on the next one or the one after that. I'm really excited about getting to finally get down to Augusta again and mix it up with some of the names that he's got there. I mean that there's a loaded roster of talent.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So yeah,
An untapped roster.
absolutely. And like headlined by Alex Kane, who Alex Kane doesn't need introduction or anything, but like I'm such a fan of that guy. I think the world of him. If you've only seen his MLW stuff, hey, you've seen a lot of good stuff, but like I've seen him in other places. And I mean, he's so young, he's so good, and he's still nowhere near his potential. And he's a guy that I really he's hungry. He still wants it. I just saw him and another guy, CB Suave, have a match for Southern Honor Wrestling in Canton, Georgia. And I got to be on the call for that. And after the show, Alex pulled me aside and he goes, well, what did you think? And I kind of, and I let him know, like, I really enjoyed it. But what if and that's my big thing is always what if. Like I don't like to tell you pro
Yeah.
wrestling's art, right? It's
Right.
literally art. So
Exactly.
like I'm not going to tell Picasso how to paint a picture, and he can't tell me I'm doing a wrist walk, right? It's all perspective. So I don't like to say this was wrong, but like, what if you did this way? And as I was breaking down a couple things to him, he was just like, oh my God, I never thought about it that way before, but that's awesome. So, they've got him on the books. Rico Gonzalez, who's I'm pretty sure going to be on the card the 15th of February, is one of those guys that I don't understand why he doesn't have more buzz than he does. I think he's awesome. And I mean, there's just a litany of guys like that. But like, I
Yeah.
really think
Yeah.
they're stepping in with 2 feet, and there's some special things that are about to take place in Augusta in 2020.
Absolutely, guys, and for sure, go check out NLCW Wrestling on Instagram, and I'll drop the link down in the comment in the excuse me, not the comments, in the description of the
In both,
podcast.
we'll do it both.
But yeah, we're gonna do both. Why not? This is my
Yeah.
show. I can do whatever I want. Sal, I can't thank you enough, man. I know obviously this is the end. I have to thank you, and you were so wonderful. Genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on. You are an absolute pleasure to speak with. I could literally go another 3 hours with
Oh
you.
well, then let's schedule something else. Let's do it again sometime. How's that work for you?
Absolutely. I am sold. You guys heard it here. Now we have it on video. He has to come back.
No, done deal. Yeah, it was all my
Before
pleasure.
before you go, Sal, where can people get a hold of you? Where can people check out? Because you've got some cool stuff going on social
Yeah,
media. Where can people get a hold of
so
you?
you can find me on Instagram at Sal_Rinauro because I messed up the first Instagram account. You can find me on Technology is Hard. You can find me on X at Sal Rinauro, and then you can find me on Facebook, Sal Rinauro. Try to make it as easy as possible, especially with a name like Rinauro. I've got every vowel in the book. If this was Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak would love.
Oh my God, I love it so much. Well, folks, that's going to be us for this week. Remember, go check out NLCW in Augusta, Georgia next month, and go show Sal some love. Go heckle him a little bit if you want to. Man, he's got some fire on Instagram. You guys got to go check it out, and obviously keep your eyes on NWA.
Well, while you mention it, we will be in Forney, Texas this weekend for Shockwave. We'll be back in Tampa, Florida on February 2nd for another taping. I think that's all we've announced, but there's more coming. I promise you. I just don't think I'm allowed to leak that information. But you could, we've got new episodes of Power that drop every week, 6:05 on Tuesday on X. If you watch really closely at the very end and you see the producers, you see my name, which is crazy, right? Yeah,
Hey.
and because they do it alphabetically, it usually says Dr. Tom Pritchard and Sal Rinauro. Like, yay. So yes, please make sure you check all that stuff out. And if you really want, you can go to my Pro Wrestling Tees store,
There
prowrestlingtees.com
we go.
/Sal Rinauro. So much cool stuff.
And that's going to be in the description too.
And the comments. Double dipping the chip.
Hey, in the comments. There we go. There we go. Again, thank you so much, Sal. I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, brother. We're going to do this again, hopefully pretty
That's
soon.
great. You give me a date, we'll do this.
Alrighty. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And don't forget, hug your mom.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.